it describes the variety of things that I do. So I work as a psychotherapist, and so it talks about my psychotherapy work. I also work as an astrologer, and my website describes that. And I also write in the media, and it shows some of my writing in the media. So the website covers everything. Some people have more than one website for the different kinds of work they do, but I put it all on one.
Okay, so what is the name of your, what is the name you choose for your website?
Oh, www.babskirby.com.
Okay.
Yes.
It will be mentioned anyway.
Okay.
What is the idea here? What is your position in the media? What sort of work do you do for the newspapers?
I do sunshine columns.
Pardon?
I do the sunshine columns.
Oh yes, that's it. Yes.
Yes.
So,
I have done other media work in the past. I did a problem page once, where you put whole charts up, and I've written a few articles in the past. But in recent, the main thing I do these days is just the sunshine columns.
Well, I have a certain sympathy for this sort of approach, because astrology is not only individual. People, I think the first relationship of the public to astrology is not necessarily that it's going to study them individually as a unique person. They possibly might be attracted also by the fact that they will belong to a certain family of people who is Aries or Taurus, and besides, it is interesting that you belong to the two extremes.
I do, yes.
Yes,
because I've done academic work in astrology. I did an MA at Essex University on Jungian and post-Jungian studies, and part of my MA was looking at Jung's approach to astrology. So I've done a dissertation on that, and very involved with the various academic initiatives in this country. I'm on the Sophia Trust Committee, for instance. I've been on it all the way through.
Yes.
And
you probably met in Bath then.
Yes,
2 years ago.
yes. Well, I've been to all of those conferences, and the conferences at Kent. And yes, partly because I was doing my MA on Jungian astrology, I was asked to come onto that.
So as such, you have to give your advice on a certain number of dissertations or initiatives?
No, I don't. No, the committee advises the benefactor on where to fund, what to fund. So we act in an advisory capacity. But as you know, we funded the Bath Spa, and then Lampeter, and Kent, and the Warburg. We funded the Warburg conference just this last weekend. So, you know, we're...
Yes, you are very powerful in a way. I'm a little foreign to certain aspects. Maybe some of my question might be naive or out of date. But what about the Urania Trust?
Yes, I'm also a UT trustee.
It does exist?
Yes, I'm a Urania Trust trustee. There's four trustees, and we fund. So we do regular funding mainly for publications these days. So again, I can give you the website, and you can see the various things that we've done and what we're doing. And
I heard there has been an important donation in favor of all this funding, or how does it work? Where the money comes from? I mean,
well, the Urania Trust was given money years and years and years ago.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, we were given a big amount of money, and then we bought the building, and that was sort of a long time ago.
It was the Caledonians?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And there was a library.
There was a library, and the various organisations rented premises there, and we had classes there. But gradually people moved out, and was no longer being used by astrologers. It was running at a phenomenal loss at one point, and the UT had to stem that. And we then sat on it for a while and rented it to a group of architects. And we had the Midheaven bookshop that John Etherington runs.
I met him, yes.
Yes.
I had an interview with him yesterday.
Okay, so he rented part of the building, and the rest was a sort of private setup. And we sold the building not so long ago, and we've invested the money, and now what we're doing is we've got an income from the investment that we spend every year.
You're not especially troubled by the actual financial situation.
I think our investments, we've got Christine Skinner as a UT trustee, so I think we're all right.
Good.
Yes, I don't know if you know Christine Skinner, but
well, maybe.
Well, she works for the banks, and she's a well-known financial astrologer.
Yeah. What happened to the library?
The library, I believe...
Because I met Patrick Curry, he was very worried about the library.
Where the library went to. Well, I think it went to Bath Spa, but I'm not sure. I'm not exactly sure. Nick will know what happened to the library, Nick Campion. He'll know where the library is. I don't know whether the AA took all the books or whether it all went down to Bath Spa or what exactly has happened to it, to be honest.
So, it's very good news that you know all these aspects.
Yes.
And because in fact it shows that money can help.
Oh yes.
Can help developing initiative, developing events, and that it makes a difference.
Yes, the UT has funded various events as well as publications. So there's a lot of different books and the conference papers from Kent, we funded the publication of those.
Yes, I just have it, yeah.
Yeah, the conference papers from one of the Bath conferences we funded.
Yes.
Maggie's doing a book on horary that we funded.
And what is the name of the...
It's not published what Maggie's doing yet, so...
No, I mean, do you have your own name, or do you, do you co-publish with a house?
We don't publish.
No,
we give a grant.
Yes, a grant that it will help a publisher to publish.
Yeah, we give a grant. All we ask is that the UT is acknowledged.
I see.
For having helped.
From the academic point of view, what does that mean? Does that mean that how money can help developing a department or a position within the framework of a university? It can help also.
Oh, definitely. Well,
because you can say, well, you can create this structure, and we'll pay for the person who will be working for this structure. How does it work?
The Urania Trust isn't doing that. The Urania Trust is, because it doesn't have that large amount of money, it's really making more specific, smaller fundings of 2,000 or 3,000 usually, sometimes less.
And what does it help? At what level does it help?
Well, it helps things be published that would not come into...
All right.
Yeah.
But in the field of, you mentioned Kent, Lampeter,
yes.
Bath. How money did play a role in this question?
The UT money didn't play a role there.
And the other groups you
but
are
the
also...
Sophia Trust did.
Yes.
Oh yes, the Sophia... None of these things would have been there without the Sophia Trust. There was a large donation to the Sophia Trust from an anonymous benefactor. And
it brings a conviction. What difference does it make? I mean, the university will accept if there is some money
to pay for the tutor.
Yes.
Yes.
It is a deal.
Yes, it's a deal.
Oh.
But if you're, for instance, Geoffrey was already studying at Kent in the department of religious and mystical experiences. So he was already studying there, and Angela Voss was already in place at Kent, and she's an astrologer and an academic.
Yes.
And with the help of them, we opened it up, and we paid money in order to cover the costs of getting an MA that was more specifically
Yes.
about astrology. And
Is it a tradition in the English university to have this sort of deal?
I don't know.
Private
Yes,
initiatives?
I think so. And I think the issue is, it's like seeding something.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the MA at Essex, for instance, which is in Jungian and post-Jungian studies, that was the first Jungian MA in this country, because they're all Freudian. The psychoanalytic studies. It was in the Department of Psychoanalytic Studies at Kent, and it's now a viable, up and running MA. So various MAs will need X number of students to make them viable and to cover their costs.
Yeah.
And
Right.
so by putting money up in the first place, you can get that ball rolling, but then you need them to become financially self-sufficient in the long term.
And I suppose also that the subject is important.
Yes.
They're not going to accept anything.
No, and you've got to...
But today, astrology would not be taught if there was not this support.
Yes, and it's not
The university will not develop at all any academic level connected with astrology.
No, and it's not astrology as such that's being taught. It's within the context of cosmology and divination, or it's in the context of the history of ideas.
Yes.
So it's not how to erect a chart that's being taught. Anyway, it's in a broader philosophical context.
Yes, sure. But still, they wouldn't do it if they wouldn't be ready to do it without any support or sponsoring.
No.
Because
there was, well, put it like this, there wasn't any going on.
It's not a priority for them.
No, there wasn't any going on until we started, until we had the anonymous benefactor put up the money and we started making those initiatives.
Is it the same source for the Urania Trust?
No, the Urania Trust had its money 30 years ago.
Yes, it was at the time of John Addy even.
Yes, so there's been no big donation to the Urania Trust in a long time. But this was a big donation, and the Sophia Trust was set up specifically to manage that.
So you are very much involved in all this sponsoring and lobbying, I would say.
Yes, I am. Yes.
And what has determined this vocation to is it in your chart to be involved in? Was it indicated in your chart that you would be involved in such responsibility?
Yes, I'm sure it was, but I don't know that I want to go into my chart.
No, okay.
Yes.
Okay, well, it's we can say that it's very interesting because we hear all the time of things which happen in England, and we don't know at all how it works. We don't know the source.
Yes.
And now I think we become a little more intelligent thanks to you, because it's stupid to say, it happens, etc.
Yes.
By the way, you heard of this unpleasant news about the European Statute of Astrology?
No.
Lindbergh mentioned that recently, that astrology is to be considered as an amusement or something like that.
Oh, we've all had that going on for years in this country.
Yes.
On some level, I don't quite know what the latest is. Where you're meant to say that when you do a chart reading that this is for entertainment purposes only.
Yes, you're supposed to say that in advance.
Yes, no, I don't.
No.
I don't. I'm not going to.
Okay.
I refuse.
Apparently, it has passed at the level of the European authorities.
The thing is that the people that come to see me are looking for some quite serious help and understanding. So I think it's a nonsense.
Okay, let's come back to these extremes that we mentioned before.
Yes.
That the two vocations of contradictory vocations of astrology as helping people to belong to a group or to a certain family of persons, and on the other side, concentrating on what makes a big difference, I mean their own difference. There is a question which I like to ask now to the people I meet is the question, maybe for you it's not significant, but I still will ask it because it has to do with what I've just heard. The idea of what is normal, what is a normal process or a normal person according to astrology, and what is, in what case precisely we are in the field of pathologies and but if you compare with medicine, medical studies, on one side people learn what is man and what is a woman, in general, and then of course they will have to study all sorts of cases where there is something special, something different, something which doesn't work. Do you think that we have this same structure, this development with these two levels, what is general and normal, and what is pathological and abnormal and individual? I have the feeling that this duality is not clearly conscious today, or not clearly present in the astrological discussions. And,
I think that's quite a broad question because on the whole, one of the things that I like about looking at a chart or reading a chart for someone is that it does describe a whole spectrum of behaviours without pathologizing.
Right.
Yeah, and I think that that's one of the very positive things that I like about astrology. On the other hand, you do have people with pathological traits, but you wouldn't look at a chart and necessarily know that somebody had those traits. But if you met them and you experienced them as being psychotic, for instance, you might then understand why that was so from the chart. So I'm not sure if I'm answering you here.
No, it's a delicate question which is not totally common today, so I have to develop more. Well, if we consider the task, the mission of a physician is to restore, to help the person to retrieve normal health,
yes,
and to finish with all the dysfunctions which could have happened.
Yeah.
And so it's a sort of standard system. I mean, actually, to recover a normal way of life. Although they are very conscious that a certain person has a specific profile at a certain moment, but they are not telling the person that it's all right. I mean, you're not going to say, well, you have a problem, you have a cancer, it's all right. They are trying to help the person to escape from that situation. And in astrology, in medical astrology, it's interesting because when you speak with people who are at the same time astrologers but also who practice medical astrology, there's a sort of contradiction because when they act as in the field of medical astrology, obviously they will detect in the chart mostly the things which go wrong. They're not going to identify the person with the chart because the chart is supposed only to indicate where there are problems or where there might be problems. But when they pass to the other hat and they say, well, now we are working on astropsychology, immediately the idea of a reference to any sort of normality or normalcy or normal order of things is not obvious. And in fact they answer, well, finally what is important is that the person should should assume the chart as well as possible. But how is it possible to consider a norm as there is no individual norm? No?
Well, I'm just thinking this may or may not fit what you're saying. But
well, anyway, the point
yes.
is to discover
yes.
who you are.
Well, I, for instance, was with one client. I think I saw her twice for astrology, and so she's coming in off from. I have got no knowledge of her, and she has a very strong Neptune, and I'm spending quite a bit of time with her. And I begin to realise, it slowly dawns on me in the first consultation, that she is actually quite unwell, and that this Neptune is being expressed, shall we say, with an awful lot of fantasy and not enough reality, and that as a psychotherapist I would say she was borderline.
Sure.
Yeah, and it's quite hard and quite shocking when you're suddenly faced with that, because I wasn't anticipating that. I hadn't thought this Neptune might be manifesting with so much lack of reality, or that she would be as unwell as she was. And it was only in the second consultation that I managed to suggest to her that she needed to seek further help, and that her imagine, and to look at other ways that she could use what I would describe to her as an overactive imagination. And so we talked quite a lot about writing fairy stories, using that imagination in other ways, and trying to address the fact that it was infused in her life in ways that wasn't that helpful to her.
Do you mean by that there is a normal way or ideal way to live according to your Neptune, and there
yes.
is also a difficult way or a pathological way to...
Yes, yes,
so
I would say that there was, and I would say that she'd slipped out of contact with normal reality, and that was quite dangerous for her.
So does that mean that for you, Babs Kirby, that each planet can be described in its normal development, its normal expression? There is a normal way of being Mercury or being Venus, and there are different possibilities of getting out of the normal path and
yeah, I would say that's
deriving from the normal way of living.
Yeah, particularly with, well, even with Jupiter. I was going to say particularly the outer planets, but and Jupiter too, Jupiter and Saturn too. Eve Jackson wrote a book quite a long time ago about Jupiter and looked at various psychopathic murderers, serial killers, who all had very strong Jupiter, very, very strong Jupiter. They got away with it. They felt a right to do what they were doing.
Sublimation.
Yeah, so they may have had quite difficult Mars, Saturn's, Mars, Pluto's, but the Jupiter was also strongly configured in those charts. So we tend to think of Jupiter as a bit benign, but it can be incredibly omnipotent and grandiose, and give someone the idea that they can behave according to their own morals rather than society's, and sort of, so yes.
Okay, well, continue. Let's return to the other extreme. So, you admit that there can be a prediction or a provision or a prognostic, or I don't know how you call it, which would be accepted and true for a great number of people.
Yes, I would see the signs. If you're looking at sun signs, and I've written a book on sun signs as well.
Good.
A sort of Linda Goodman type book on the sun signs, and they're kind of basic archetypes. If you're Jungian, you're looking at archetypal principles, and so that can colour a whole way of being, and it's got lots of variations and possibilities within that. There's a lot of scope. And so, you know, people who want to be cynical or sceptical will say, well, I'm a Cancer, but I'm not like that. But you don't have to be like that. There's scope. There's lots of different kinds of Cancerians, but they're all going to have something of that archetype in the way they, in themselves.
So the chart might precisely help to understand, in a way, how you are going to be Cancer or how to be Virgo?
Yes. I don't know whether the chart would say how you're going to be it, but I think that in dialogue you can discover that with an astrologer, or, you know, in terms of, say, reading, you can read a spectrum of possibilities and see where you are on it. And you, as you say, you belong. You can have a sense of belonging to...
So you respect this idea that the person knows astrology through the signs, and that she doesn't want you to tell her that she has nothing to do with this sign, because in your chart there is other elements. You will keep the idea that it's still a major line to be...
I think the sun is incredibly important,
yes,
actually.
Apparently. Yeah.
I think that having, you know, I think we all kind of backed away from it because the whole chart became important, the ascendant and the moon. Of course it is. But actually the sun is really important.
Yeah, I was expecting if you are logical with your attitude,
yes,
you would give importance to the sun.
Very much so, and I work with solar returns quite a lot, and you know, if you're not in any way identified with your solar energy, then solar returns won't work for you either. But if you are, then they will. And
yes.
they're
Well, we have to discuss the question of the zodiac anyway, because it's it's not that easy to define what is a sign. I mean, every sign. Well, I believe that for you, maybe I'm wrong. Do you consider the 12 signs as 12 different archetypes, or do you include them in broader families, like, for instance, fire signs or I mean, do you work really on the individuality, as it were, of each sign, or do you consider that there are signs of belonging to a certain season, or I mean, can you regroup signs in a way or another? Is my question.
Well, I think I stick with the basic principles, you know, the mutable cardinal fix, the fire, earth, air, water, and that that breaks, or you know, there's only one mutable fire, and that's Sagittarius, etc., etc. But from those basic principles, you build up an archetypal picture of that sign.
What about the planets? Do you consider rulerships also to understand the signs, or not so much?
Not really. I use the rulerships to understand the planets, I think, rather than the planets to understand signs. But obviously they have a correlation. But Jupiter is not Sagittarius in my mind, or the ninth house in my mind. They are separate things.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh yes.
So I don't use that kind of American alphabet type system.
I see.
That doesn't really work for me.
So if I understand well, there is a planetary astrology and there is a zodiacal astrology, or...
Well, I don't know. I think I evolved, because when I was first thinking about astrology, I focused on the planets an awful lot, and aspects an awful lot. But it was only really when I wrote the sun sign book, and I got much more into the signs, that I sort of shifted.
Yeah.
And
yes.
I think they're all very, very important. And
well, it's easier to know what is the sign of someone than the planet of someone.
Yes.
For the general public.
Yeah.
he has a lot of difficulty to define himself from the point of view of a planet.
Yes. It depends how deep you want to go, how many layers you want to go.
Yes, so
but the sun sign is a, most people can identify with their sun sign, and it's a useful way of thinking about themselves.
yeah, so you don't despise this aspect, and and you are not surprised. You admit that the same text can be meaningful for hundreds of thousands of people in their different ways, but it will still be true for many people.
Yes, I think so. Yes. Yeah.
Because they will understand it differently, because they will react differently to the situation. Or
yes. Well, even when you have somebody come in for a consultation, you will say certain things, and they will hear and retain certain things. So
yeah, exactly.
So
in fact,
yes. So they take away from you what they want to take.
Yeah.
So if you're writing something, people will take from that what they want to take.
Yes.
And you don't control that.
Yes, that's an important point that you're making, which is sometimes maybe a little. It's a little difficult to accept, because at the same time, for a student in astrology, it means that finally he cannot control how what he says will be received.
No.
So he cannot be. Well, I will use an expression which might be a little provocative. He cannot be wrong finally, because the person will give sense to what is being said.
That's true, although there are times when someone comes back and says that I said something a year ago, for instance, and I absolutely know that I would never have said that, because I know the way they put it.
Yes.
And yet that's what they've heard, and it's been meaningful to them, and they've made it up completely.
So you cannot be, so the idea of an astrologer, I mean, it's a line which is very fascinating for me, but it's a little dangerous, I think, to say that finally what we say, the only point is the person ready to participate to what we say? I mean, to enter into our... Okay, if they are not, it doesn't work. If they are not ready to give meaning and to look in themselves what it could mean, it won't work. But as soon as they are ready to do that,
they have
it
to
cannot
engage.
fail.
It's a process. It's a process by which they engage, and when they come to see me for a chart reading, I'm not laying down some blueprint anyway of who they are. I'm curious about various things in their charts. They'll come with particular transits. I'll inquire about what might be surfacing, and so it's a dialogue. I'm not there to prove something about my astrology. I'm there to try and help them deal with a process that they're engaged in at the moment.
Yes.
And they've come to me at that moment because they've got something they need to get help with.
So in fact, a major point is what we call the transfer. I mean, the fact that the person thinks an astrologer can help.
Oh yes, they actually do sometimes come with quite unrealistic expectations of what you can do. But on the other hand, if someone is open with you and they start talking about what their issues are, something quite extraordinary can sometimes happen, and you see where they're speaking from in their chart, what the issue, what the problem might be, and you do have ideas, perhaps, of how they can progress with that.
Yes, but so can you tell me why someone would like specially to consult an astrologer?
Okay. On the whole, I suppose one of the differences between someone who will come and consult an astrologer and somebody who might come into psychotherapy, for instance, is that actually somebody who's coming into psychotherapy is taking their issues and their problems more seriously. they're going to make them more committed to their process. And obviously coming to psychotherapy is a really big commitment, and you're really going to be reflecting on matters for a long time. So a lot of the time the people who come to an astrologer are very wounded people, but on the other hand there's not taking themselves seriously enough to go into psychotherapy. So it's quite a challenge, because you're not, you know, it's not like they haven't got big problems, because they often do have. But they're just wanting to kind of dip in and then go away and try and work through the next stage or phase by themselves.
We could say, for instance, that they prefer, they don't want to be too much involved by, which is by being the first source of the first matter of the consultant, and they prefer to have a chart having this role.
Yes.
Because this chart has some sort of abstract or objective reality.
Yes.
Which they prefer to be the center of the study than themselves. This sort of.
Well, they're kind of looking for their answers via the chart, and the chart does provide a kind of map.
Yeah.
That is useful. But then I do have some people that I see weekly where I'm working with them with their charts as well. So I do have a mixture of clients. So I don't just have the astrology clients that come in for this single consultation. I do have people, as I say, that I see on a regular basis, and we include their chart in that dialogue.
There's a very popular expression in France today, the word coaching.
Oh yes.
Astrological coach, astrology and coaching. Maybe you think it's compatible, you think it's possible to speak of astrological coaching?
But
I don't know if the word has the same meaning in France or in England.
No, we have a lot of people doing coaching over here. It doesn't interest me though.
Because the coach is more involved in.
It's more kind of what I think of as CBT type work, cognitive behavioural type therapy, solution focused.
Yes.
You know, it doesn't interest me.
No.
I'm much more interested in depth psychology, Jungian psychology, not coming up with those sorts of strategies.
Well, there are. Well, we could say that in the consultation there are four different characters. You know, there is the astrologer, there is a consultant. Well, anyway, and there is a map, and there is the astrology. And in a certain way, astrology. Without astrology, you wouldn't do what you would do. I mean, is it astrology which gives you the feeling that you can help a person?
Well, no, I was a psychotherapist first.
So what does astrology give you?
What does astrology give me on top of that?
Right,
Yes.
legitimacy, I don't know. In what way do you receive something from astrology which will give you the right to consult and to help or to advise?
Yeah. Well, I suppose, yes, I was a psychotherapist first, and I do see some people without using their charts at all,
Yes.
and without ever knowing their birth data.
Right.
And we're just working as a psychotherapist and a client.
Yes.
So I have got those kinds of clients.
Right. That's right.
But I got very interested in astrology, I began to study it, and I found it quite illuminating. And so I like to use it alongside psychotherapy or as a thing in itself, because I think it can be very, very helpful. I think for me it's about illuminating issues rather than about producing strategies.
So you're really a person of the extremes, you know, because you have the two types of astrology. You have also, I suppose, psychotherapy and astrology. I think that, I could explain that by a sort of, I think women have maybe a better capacity to conjoin extremes than men, maybe. Well, another story. But in fact, it's the fact that the astrologers very often say it's quicker through astrology. When we think about psychology, they say, oh well, it's very long. Astrology goes very much more quickly to the real target. What do you think about that? It's an illusion.
Yeah, I think it's a complete illusion. You know, because that it reminds me of those weekends, those kind of consciousness raising weekends that people go on. Intensives, you know, they do illuminate.
Yeah.
But and that is useful. But change doesn't come from that.
No.
It doesn't come.
No.
You have to do the work. And a lot of astrologers, I think you can sort of circumvent pain or process by knowing. And there's this whole desire to know. But actually, you can't. And you still have to go through various experiences. And in order to change, that illumination doesn't necessarily bring about change at all, because unless it's right through you, nothing changes. So people have these moments of illumination, and then it just sort of, it's like a puff of smoke, it's just gone, and they're back to how they were.
Actually, one of the problems is precisely the problem of identification. People, in fact, need to identify themselves, that they can identify themselves to a certain that sign, and they can also identify themselves to what the astrologer says. They are not trying to work on themselves, they will integrate or adopt what is proposed to them. Even, as you say, even if they reinterpret what has been told to them, it is still something they receive.
But I don't think they'll take it on board if it doesn't really resonate with them. I don't think you can actually tell somebody they're X if they're not. I think it'll just, it won't make sense to them, so they won't internalise it. Internalising something takes a long time.
A matter of time is very important.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But still, we can start. There is always a beginning to everything. So someone can start identification, a process of identification, and of course it can take a lot of time. But I think it's not neutral that, for instance, people were born under a certain sign and they know that for a long time.
Yes.
It can play a role in their
Yeah.
process of definition or
Yes, it
identification.
can. Absolutely,
And
yeah.
it is something which is added to what they are from other reasons. I mean,
Yeah.
it's just an injunction.
Yeah, no, I
And
think
the
that's
chart
true.
is also an injunction. Suddenly the person discovered that is something which she is. I mean, it's something which belongs to her. She discovered that she has a sort of extra part of herself which she did not know, and she's quite happy. It's just a sort of gift in a way. She receives a gift. And she's happy with it. The problem of the gift is that sometimes we are happy with a gift, even if we don't need it, even if it's, well, you know, I always say, for instance, that when we are entering a house, there are a lot of things, a lot of objects, which are not necessarily connected one with the other. I won't take the example of this room, but anyway, the lot of things we have received is enormous. You know? While the work we have been doing about ourselves is something much more specific. So if astrology is the problem is, if astrology is a gift, if the astrological identity is a gift, why not?
But, you know, I think that for somebody to receive this, they've had to be seeking. There has to be desire. Lacan talks a lot about the desire. And, you know, the person who, you know, there's an awful lot of people who, they may know they're Taurus or whatever, but they're not that bothered and they're not that interested and they're not seeking. So...
Well, you know, for instance, I don't know, you have a heritage, an old aunt who dies, and you receive a nice house someplace you were not seeking, and you are happy to have it. In life, some people are happy just to receive certain things, even they were not expecting them. And by the way, I would classify people between the people whose life is precisely made of things they get or they lose. And people who are really working on themselves, what they can change, what they can transform in themselves. And the question is, astrology can be received also as a gift, as something which is offered to you, and that you know, there is an expression in La Fontaine. Probably you know the fables of La Fontaine, the fox and the every flatterer, how do you say? When you flattering a person is to live at the expense of the person who listens to the flattering. I mean, people are very much, you say to someone something which is totally false, or which doesn't correspond at all to the image she gives of herself, she will be happy. If you say to someone who looks very shy, oh, but you are a very courageous person and sometimes you are very strong, they say, no, they don't really necessarily refuse or reject what you say to them.
Well,
because they say, why not?
No, I don't agree, actually.
Okay.
Because I would think that they would, you know, think that they have a kind of bullshit detector. I would say that they recognise that it doesn't resonate with them, that it isn't congruent with their experience of themselves.
Yes.
And so if I was looking at a chart and I was thinking that somebody ought to have that, and their experience of themselves was that they didn't, then I'd be curious about that discrepancy.
Sure.
Rather than trying to say, you've got this,
yes, that's obviously this bullshit detector is very essential.
Yeah.
But people are not necessarily capable to operate this sort of detector, and when we pull them in, for instance, if when we receive a gift, for instance, we don't have this sort of detector immediately. I mean, we are happy to receive something.
No, I don't think we do. I think, you know, that's what happens to all these people who get these emails saying they've won the lottery.
Yes.
Or will you
you don't do
process all this £1 million from Africa for me? My uncle's died and you've got the same surname. You know, most people know this is crap.
Yes.
That they're about to be ripped off.
Yes, yes.
So I absolutely don't think you can just ply people. There are people that are susceptible. These are vulnerable people, and they do exist. But I don't think.
Let's take the example, for instance, of children in a family. Why they develop sometimes very differently. And well, I'm not a psychologist as you are, but I have a certain idea about it. Why do they develop, for instance, the question of the twins, for instance, why do they develop so differently? Isn't it because precisely their parents are projecting different things on each other, and they want them to be different, and they become different because they accept the mirror, they accept the idea, different idea, from outside, not necessarily from inside. I mean, or on the contrary, or you say they internalize a difference, which are the difference of definition, which of image they receive, and they live with that.
Yeah, I think the issue of twins is very interesting, and it does seem that they divvy up the chart, that there's one chart and one twin seems to identify with certain dynamics in it, and one twin seems to identify with, and it seems as if twins do want to emphasise their differences in order to have a sense of their separate identities. Whether this is because of how the parents relate to them or not, I don't know. I haven't done any research.
Yes.
I've worked with a twin, not both, and so I've listened to people's experience of being a twin, and on the whole, they seem to experience themselves as very different.
All right.
Actually,
Yes.
you know.
But it's also connected with the environment, probably.
I'm sure it must be, yeah, I'm sure. And I'm sure that that's emphasised by the parents too, who also want to be able to see these children as different.
Let us pass to another concept which is rather well accepted. Would you say that astrology is a language?
Yeah.
And in what way it is, in what sort of language it is, and what is a language?
It's a sort of symbolic language. It's dealing an awful lot with with symbols, with metaphors, with possibilities. So it's not a concrete language.
No.
It's an imaginative language.
But the question behind my question is there an historical wisdom? Because a language, there are several theories about the language. One of them is that the language is a mirror of any sort of message. And the other one is that there is a sort of semantic structure in a language which already has an influence upon the people who speak this language, and they will have different association, different connections, and finally a different representation of the world. So astrology, well, apparently a priori might belong to this group of languages who originally at least have a sort of internal message, internal wisdom, internal knowledge, or is it just a way of communicating, of translating? So my question, which comes back to the idea of normalcy or normality, is there a message which is not only to the individual, but is there a message of astrology to the world? What does astrology say to mankind about life, about people, about divisions of the different sort of questions, of groups? Is there any message that astrology is conveying to mankind?
I'm not sure, because I don't feel that's where I am, if you see what I mean. I feel I'm quite kind of...
Yeah.
I'm definitely not conveying something personally to mankind. I'm doing my little bit on a quite individual basis.
Yes.
Although, you know, there is a sort of sense of community and of a shared language with other astrologers that's important to me, that we share this symbolic way of thinking and understanding, and you know, as a language it has changed and evolved. You know, we're looking at some of the language at the Warburg conference,
Yes.
you know, and how people practice astrology in medieval times and the Renaissance, and their thinking was quite different to some of the ways we now think.
Yes.
So it does evolve, it has changed.
Yes, but apart from that, the language will evolve. It might have its own essence.
Well,
the
essence is there. The essence has remained. There's no doubt about it. I would say, but
is there a
society's changed as well. So you know,
Yes.
our opportunities have changed.
Yes.
That how fated or how free we are has changed as well.
About that, what do you think about the system of the political system of elections, presidential elections, or a legislative, a parliamentary? Do you think do you think it may interfere with astrology, or do you think it coincides with astrology? Because in fact, mankind, modern societies, is accustomed to have these mandates and these times. I mean, every 4 years in America or in England, they gather again to elect. It makes big events, as we have seen this year with the American. I mean, these events which are based on something rather artificial, because now we know that in the next 4 years there will be a new election in America, for instance, unless someone gets assassinated, which is not totally absurd. But it seems that mankind in Western civilization has built this sort of structure of time, which is not the astrological one, and which creates it has its own dynamic.
Yes, but I think that the people we choose as leaders at any given time, it is something that's coming and emerging out of the collective.
Yes.
And so I think that they kind of represent something that's going on a archetypal level, on a broader level.
Well, this is example. Well, there are major conjunctions, for instance. There are major events, astrologically speaking. And let's imagine that suddenly, at a moment where nothing essential according to astrology is supposed to happen, it falls on an election.
But there's always something happening.
Yes, I know.
There's always some kind of zeitgeist going on.
Well, this is a point. You know, there are astrologers who define rather clearly certain moments in a sort of discontinuous conception of time.
Yeah.
There are times where something happens, and then between these moments, well, it's more or less empty. And there is also another astrologer which is more individual, who of course, which of course thinks that it never stops never stop to be acting.
Yes.
There is always a chart is always significant for any sort of. Once we apply it to something that happens, there will always be an answer.
Yeah. So I haven't been that involved or thinking particularly about what's been going on in the States, for instance. But I know that some astrologers, I was at the AA conference this year, some astrologers were looking at McCain's chart and Barack Obama's chart, and definitely thinking that Obama had better transits. It looked better for him. But I think it's much bigger than just who's got the better transits, because just to get to that position in the first place, there's something much bigger going on. And
but what would have happened, for instance, Barbara, if there would not have been any election at this moment? If for any reason Bush would have still 2 more years to do it? It's still a challenge to have this sort of process which develops itself, and on the other side there is astrology which has its own. Even if you can use, as I agree with you, you can always find a sort of possibility of language, of translation in it, but still it is sometimes alarming and problematic to see that when there is something important in astrology, there are no elections in view, and when suddenly, on the contrary, they organize elections when there's no reason to have elections. You see what I mean?
Well, I do, but it's kind of not my field. I don't do mundane astrology. I don't.
Well, there are other examples of perverse situation created by our modern society, like, for instance, the facility to travel. because, for instance, when we want to check if astrology works or not, I don't know. Well, I mean, it's not your way of saying things. Well, in the past centuries, there were certain events which were meaningful for people, and which are less meaningful today. Which means, well, if someone tells you, well, I've been traveling from Paris to London, it's not a big event today. It was more important 30 years ago, and certainly more important 100 years ago. So, astrologically speaking, you are not going to say, well, this configuration corresponds to something important, and well, precisely you have been traveling from Paris to London or from Paris to Moscow, etc. So there is a relativization of certain events, which doesn't permit astrology to prove its point, because it's too easy. It's too easy, and it doesn't prove anything.
No, it's all it is completely relative to that person and that culture and that context.
Exactly.
The culture, the context, the individual, and astrology has to. It's a kind of a mirror within that, but it doesn't just have some absoluteness outside of that. I don't think.
I have to change my cassette.
Okay.